All right. I finally got to the Illearth War. I read through it, and Lord Foul's Bane was one of my favorite books of last year. I read through that one twice. If you haven't read these before, I am going to go through, just up to what I know. And so there will be spoilers and things like that, but I think even if you haven't read it, you might find it interesting. What an interesting little trilogy this is. And it turns out that there is a second Chronicles of Thomas Covenant. This is the first, and there's the third book back there, which I obviously haven't got to yet. And then there's, I think, a third one. This is turning out genuinely to be one of my very favorite trilogies, at the very least, or sagas. If you've read the first book, I convinced some people to read the first book, and it sounded like they really liked it. And especially people loved the first half. If you remember, it's this guy, Thomas Covenant. He has leprosy in the real world, and he's a writer. And because of the leprosy, there are things both, his wife leaves him. She can't be around him anymore. And he continues on. Basically, his leprosy becomes the driving force, the only thing that really determines his life from that point on, not just in a physical sense, like he might die, but even in a mental sense. The way that he will be able to survive is to always be fixated on it. So no rough corners. You have to basically do everything in a sense to be able to survive that. But, a part of that, if you go to the extent of what it means to survive, he's become very nasty to people, and they want him just to stay home. And he does want to hold on to a sense of his self in some way. He goes and pays his own bills and things, even though they basically want him to stay home. They get it covered. They'd rather him basically just stay and die. And as he's going in, there are times where he's just waiting for them to scream leper, unclean, filthy, that sort of thing. And he's sending all this, a big part of what really is so repulsive about the guy is actually his attitude and things like that. And so when he gets to the land, he thinks this cop car is targeting him in the first book, and as he's walking across the street, and he faints, and he's seen this prophet sort of character, and he goes to the land, and it's almost this Eden-like idyllic sort of place where things are seemingly great, and there's hurt loam, which is like this mud that takes care of the leprosy altogether. So even though he looks the way he does, he's called the unbeliever because he doesn't believe that this land even exists. And so a number of things are happening where, even as I'm reading this and as the character's going through something and wondering if it even exists, and he's an unbeliever, which has a number of ramifications. Like, what can he do in that real world if it doesn't exist? Really, he can do anything he wants with no moral consequences, and we'll get to something that really is at the core of what almost sends this whole world into a spiral. But even as we're reading this, we're wondering how much of this is a part of just his making, or if it is real in a sense. Whether it's real or not, it seems absolutely tied to Covenant himself, and he is the central figure, at least in this portion. He's been summoned to do something. And we have Lord Foul, who it's it's even more mentioned in the Illearth War that he can't really compete with people physically himself, at least at this moment. His real damage is an internal sort of corruption to make people destroy themselves. And the Illearth store or the Illearth stone is a very, it can be used for this kind of negative, awful purpose. And so we had Thomas Covenant, who in the first book, when he got this hurt loam and he feels feeling for the first time, he's revitalized. And this girl that she's part of this community that it's a big group hug sort of community, and they are part of they are stone downers, I believe. Oh, I hope that's still recording okay. They are stone downers, and so they have the lore over stonework. And then there's some that have the lore over woodworking and things like that. And they are great. And this Lena girl is a part of this village, and she's basically the descendant of or the child of this couple who everyone loves, especially Tiaran. And uh, they don't realize when he says, like, he's so surprised that people aren't repulsed by him. And when he says, I have leprosy and things, they don't even know what that, they don't even detect what that could even mean. And they sometimes will ask, well, are you unwell? And if you say because that's the mark. When they say, are you unwell, they're meaning this internal, like, are you ill inside? And if you are, that's like a taint to, that's the biggest sign of degradation, of Lord Fal's degradation and whatnot. So anyway, he gets this hurt loam on, and he ends up, this is a preteen girl, and especially if he feels like it's not even real, he takes advantage of her to the extreme. And he has a prophecy that's supposed to go to this group of lords, and this community that she's a part of is willing to take him. They're believers of not so much Thomas Covenant himself, but they're believers in the prophecy of the land and this oath of peace and things. And so a big part of this series so far is, usually we have the traditional sort of chosen one where we will have, he'll start to believe and he'll rise up and then they'll save the world. He is refusing to believe, and he clings to survival. He actively resists any sort of meaning. But in Thomas Covenant, they less so much in believing in Thomas Covenant because he's great. They believe in what he symbolically means as almost this sign of, a reincarnation or whatever the case is, of Barrack Halfhand, who was a hero from before. And they think, well, clearly this person is important, and so we have to make sure he gets the prophecy sent out to the lords, and that we are not going to hinder that, because for the well-being of the land, this Thomas guy is important. He's still chosen. And Lena is a big believer in this. And this is all in the first book still. And he rapes her. And she doesn't tell anyone. She doesn't tell her community about it because not so much she's scared of, she's embarrassed by it or things like that. Really, it seems she's doing this because she's a believer in Thomas Covenant's purpose here. So what a strange sort of thing. And just as we go on through this, it seems so tied to Thomas Covenant that and that this is his story, and his, everything hinges on him. That that it is he going to self-destruct, or is he going to overcome? And so much of what brings a sort of drop of toxicity or degradation to the land. Remember, this is a land where you can walk around and you just eat. It's like Eden, like you eat from the fruit, and you eat, and it's got hurt loam. If you get hurt, you just rub it on and it'll take care of you. We have these Wainham places where it's like little rest areas, and we have this oath of peace and things, and then Thomas has done that, and Lena doesn't tell anyone. Um, but his mother's also, or her mother, Lena's mother, Atiaran, which this is in the first half of the first book. She's so amazing, and she takes Thomas Covenant. She will be his personal guide toward um to Revelstone, where the lords are. And Lena wished she would one day become a lord, and things like that. But she would like to go to the Lord's Rat or whatever. Atiaran knows what Thomas did to her daughter, and is still willing to take him. Doesn't like Thomas, and they're not talking about it. And the whole time, Thomas is kind of stunned that she's not bringing it up. But it's interesting because he is more than dealing with the sorrow of that action. Certainly at first, once he did that initially, his main thing was like, he can't believe he can feel, and it's just this astonishment. But then he will go back into himself, and it's still more about that than it is about Lena in him, because he still doesn't believe it's real. And so as he's getting to know Atiaran, I mean distantly, but they're still in the same proximity, and they're not really getting close, but they're having these interesting sorts of moments of experiencing things. And when she takes him as far as she will go, and she's off, he's in astonishment that she didn't like kill him, lash out at him. And you kind of feel a little bit of a connection, you know, for ATR, and it feels like Thomas doesn't, he watches her go. He doesn't want to see her go. And it feels like slowly, he's still not believing in that, but whether or not it's real or not, he is making some connections with some people and characters and things. But we're starting down low. Like, our main chosen one hero isn't this idealistic, amazing, happy kind of person. It's someone who was summoned there, and as we will find in this book, the kind of the parameters around his summoning, where some people could feel that it was, Lord Fowl bringing Thomas there, because look at, once Thomas did that, and Lena, someone who had a crush on Lena, came, Trioc, and attacked Thomas. And in this book we have Trell, who was Atiaran's husband, and Atiaran has eventually passed away, and feels like, it's just the sorrow of everything has taken over. I'm going to be bouncing around on this because there's just a lot of things. By the way. So it's just interesting to see people's response to Thomas, his response to this whole situation, and himself. Mahoram, I think it was, who's kind of the Gandalf, Yoda kind of character, who's not the High Lord, but is a very interesting line here that says, where Thomas is saying, well, why are you not the High Lord? And he says, well, my time hasn't come yet. So I'm looking forward to when he becomes the High Lord, I assume at some point, and what we will get there, because the High Lord is the one who calls the shots. And I guess we should say here in the second book, when we go back, 40 years hasn't gone back in the real world for Thomas, but he's been summoned again 40 years later in that world. And so the High Lord now is Elena. And that is the daughter of Lena. And it's spelled almost the same. Elena, Lena, Elena. And so every time we look at Elena, and when Thomas finally finds out who she is, it's this stark reminder to what he did. At least it's not always actively, but he cannot really look Elena in the eye because it's just a reminder. And it takes a long time before we get it's so interesting to have that and where this goes. And I'll just say, if you're still here and you read the first book, the first half of the first book is unreal. It's great. Second half wasn't my favorite. The plot was a little boring to get to the staff of law and things. The second book is great all the way through. All the way through. And it's just amazing how the little tincture of Thomas being in the land has this ripple effect, and it might not all be because of that, but it sure seems like he's right in the middle of it. So if we have a character who's the unbeliever, we also have a believer. And Q, one of the great characters in this whole story, Hile Troy, and he is blind. And when we meet him, he has like these 1970s wraparound sunglasses or something. And he is a mirror to Covenant. He is definitely a believer. He's blind, though. And the land has helped him have a sort of vision. And so it's in the first book. In the first book, it was kind of brought up that he would have to feel things to believe it. And even when he gets his feeling back in the land, he's still not believing it. But now we have this blind man who can't see, and he's believing. And he knows about Thomas from before, and he is this he wants to be actively a hero for the land. He wants to be their guy. He's embracing the land. He embraces the purpose of he just wants to be a hero for them. He loves them. Whether or not the land is real, he doesn't care. And we find Thomas eventually, by the end of this, kind of leaning a little bit closer to Troy. Now, where everyone Troy really likes Lena. Not just likes her, but he admires her and is bugged when Elena will, show Thomas all this respect, and Thomas doesn't seem to deserve it. And especially when Troy finds out what Thomas once did to Lena, Elena's mother, even though he doesn't know about that connection yet. He's just incensed about it. And he really is trying to expose Covenant's shame. And, Covenant is, I think he's becoming more and more shameful of that. And we find it's so compelling. It's so compelling because it all hinges on Thomas Covenant, and he is so about inaction at times. And it will almost prove in the conclusion here that he was right about that. That as Elena's actively trying to fight against this, and the Blood Guard are, they're trying to destroy or hinder Foul's forces, which now he has this massive force. Hile Troy thinks it was something like 5 times the amount that they could get, but if they can just kind of put them in this funnel area, they could even destroy a force 5 times greater. But it turns out when they see him, it's like 100 times greater, and so he loses so much hope there. Um, this second section is all his, and so it's this military section, which is done so well. He goes down towards where the Stone Downers were and Kevin's Watch. He wants to go up on Kevin's Watch where Thomas Covenant was summoned and look out and see what's really going on. And he himself was a part of a summoning, as we'll find out. Uh, the end was tied, it was ATR, and it was tied to ATR, and she passed away, and he was kind of a product of that. And as he sees what's happening, and it's just destruction and despair, and people getting taken over with this, a lot of the giants getting destroyed, and it's like people are turning, people are losing hope, and so that is almost in itself the destruction of the land. But on top of that, there's actual brutal destruction happening in the land, and it feels like more than a force coming in like orcs. It's people turning, people of the land turning because of these wraiths with these 3 wraith commanders or lieutenants of Lord Foul who have the Illearth stone that can kind of possess people, and so a giant has been possessed, and it's something else. It's something else. Really, really fantastic stuff. So I do want to talk about the High Lords. We had Prothal in the first book, and I think he died, and that's when Thomas Covenant was sent back. His summoning was complete because or whatever. And there was also a very, almost a reverence for the position of High Lord in that book. The person who, Prothal, I think that was his name. He didn't want to, he didn't think he could handle the climactic moment that needed to be handled in the first book. And even Mahoram and everyone, in their belief that whoever's in the seat ought to be in that seat, even, whether they're a great commander or a piano teacher, there's something important about that. And even more so, it feels in this case something important that also speaks to something internal in Covenant himself. And Elena is a reflection of what happened in the first book, that he still hasn't quite, he hasn't gone back and made full amends when people, he tries to apologize for it, but he still hasn't seen Lena, who believes that Thomas will one day come and marry her. Like she's still waiting for him. Like, and it doesn't seem like she's harboring. We thought that it would just broke her, but we still haven't seen her herself. And Elena talks about her childhood at one point in this book. And how Treok, who loved Elena, was kind of like the father figure for Elena. And Treok still hates Covenant. Hates him. And was vocal about it. But also, which I found great, never, taught Elena that parents should not, or children should not inherit necessarily the prejudices or the hatred or the hurt of parents necessarily, and ultimately make their own kind of determinations. And so we have Triok who taught her that, and it's a good thing to teach, I think. Who also, but also hates Covenant, and we have Lena who was the victim of that, who never said a unkind word about Covenant to Elena. And so that mixture, we have Elena here who we have this relationship where Hile Troy is off with the army and Elena and Covenant go off and are after, this person has shown up because Covenant has been given this sword of Lorik, which is like this, this it's like the hero sword, but it's stuck in a rock and it came alive, and this person said, hey, you're ready for the seventh ward, which that's a whole other thing. Lord Kevin, centuries ago at the time of desecration, he like split up his knowledge and he buried and into seven wards or whatever, seven lord, or I don't know. One was buried, one was hidden, and da 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 da. And this character who looks like a child is there to be like, hey, congratulations, you're ready for the ultimate one. So interesting. We didn't have to go progress from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We did the first two. There's like 9 years left in this prophecy. We're jumping to number 7. And so off Elena goes to uncover that. But just because she would follow him, she has to know the trick. It's the three amigos in the burning bush. Like, even though you're there, you still have to know how you uncover this knowledge or whatever, what the secret words are, or. And so she's there with Thomas Covenant for that. And we have 2 Bloodguard who are there to protect. They were there. Their oath is to protect the High Lords or the Lords. 2 of them are there. And Elena's just flipping out that everything's happening. She still can't really uncover what is happening here, or why she can't get she's trying to command it out of this character, Amok. And it's just not working. He can't do that. If he were to just give it up, he would cease to exist. Interesting that there's so many tangents we could go on, because I'm thinking of Covenant's ring, the white gold. It's at the core of this whole thing. It's not bound by time, and it's got this tie to his wife, and because he was talking to his wife on the phone, that's what sucked him into this. Like, it's so interesting. There's so many layers. There's so many layers to this dang novel. But he clues in the end that the Bloodguard were there, and he asks the Bloodguard how long they've been around, and he uncovers that they were there, with Kevin before the desecration, and that they know more than they are saying. And through Banner, one of these Bloodguard, who, they don't serve the lore, they don't serve this or this, they serve for the protection of the lords. And so they figure that, some things are best left uncovered, because something known, a power, can also be turned against you. And so they're just not, they're staying out of it. They'll protect the lords, but they're not actively guiding. Okay. And so, very interesting thing how Thomas is kind of there in the end to manipulate this whole thing, and they find out how to uncover all this. And man, that goes to this tragic sort of crossroads, this tragic moment where it takes Elena to this pure stream under a mountain, and she can basically give a command, any command, and she will drink from this, and it'll like burn her up eventually, like it's a sacrificial thing, and she can make any command. And so uh her belief in the end is that if Kevin, the original Kevin, were to be back, he could destroy Fowl's armies by himself and could easily do that. But, she does that, and Thomas is warning against that, saying if, Lord Fowl isn't able to really intervene on his own, but he has immense influence, and he has a long-term plan. And anything that people do, even things that are well-intentioned where they think they're helping out, could be playing into Lord Fowl's hands at any moment. And even Thomas Covenant feels, like just going back, he feels like even his summoning, because like with Drool, like the first thing we get is I summoned him. And he's by Thomas Covenant feeling more he's connected to the summoning by Lord Fowl, he feels like I should try not to be involved if I'm a conduit for evil or whatever. But he's told no, he is the product of a creator who summoned him. And so his selection from the creator, who's, this is like a Job story almost between, but it's like, no, Thomas Covenant almost has this Job like kind of, story around him where no, Thomas Covenant will overcome in the end. I'm sure of it. This creator is sure of it. And so if you are, that's why a lot of people have, or would have, or the reader should have also, some level of, despite everything that happens despite anything else that happens in the novel, we should really be looking at the internal sort of thing that's happening with Thomas himself, because he's the chosen one. And if you read Harry Potter or watched the things, it's like everyone looks to Dumbledore, but Dumbledore tells everyone, no matter what, believe in Harry Potter. So that's what Elena, that's what this sort of thing is. Anyway, I'm explaining a chosen one thing to people who already understand it, but you know what it's just this very interesting inversion to that. Anyway, Hile Troy in that second section, he does have this overwhelming sort of moment, and where he's seeing all this happening, but he's still able to. But people are also still looking to him. Even Mahoram is like, get it together, whether you're blind or not. You are the guy for this. And so it's like there are two people with their different. We have Troy from the other world and Thomas from the other world, and they're both important for their own reasons. Just so I don't forget, like, this is the best character study, pure character study type of. It's the best, like the best character study trilogy I might have ever read. I do love Malazan, and I do love a number of things. My favorite book, one of my favorite books, not my favorite, but I love Frankenstein, and I love things that just go into the psyche of one character, whether they're good or not. And this whole thing with Thomas Covenant is just amazing. And halfway through this book, when he finds that Elena doesn't resent him, and even Elena, like, it's really messed up because even Elena kind of comes onto him and wants to do Thomas Covenant, and that is just like messed. Like he goes, whoa, that is insane. And he also has this kind of messed up internal dialogue that's like, it's insane because he kind of wants to do that despite the fact, like, and so if he were to go down that road, he at least is recognizing that that would be a major step towards the destruction of the land. And so he resists that, and actually by after he resists that, he kisses her head, and actually, like, this is like a spark of connection towards her and affection, and he's not going to do that. I'm messed up that we have that dialogue that he kind of would desire that, but he's not going to do that. And that, it's the land works a little different because she didn't really realize that, like, she knows who he is, but she was still wanting that. And then from that point on, she's kind of more distant than him, where she is like, she's been closer and she's been pulling and he's been pushing, and now he's going towards her and she's a little distant. So it feels, even though it's a weird situation, like, it feels like he's not going to just do something, whether it's real or not. He's making some kind of connection with the land, and he's becoming closer to Troy's way of viewing things, because they argue. Covenant says, like, well, how can you believe this? And Troy says, well, how can you not? How can you not? And whether it was real or not, how can you not do something while you're here? How can you not be active in the protection of the land? How can you not love these people while you're here? And we see Thomas starting to at least make some of that kind of connection, whether it's real or not, right? And he was so much up to this point, this midway point of the trilogy, is him being totally, like, that's the most crucial thing to him up to the midway point, exactly the midway point in the trilogy, this first Chronicles. And it informs all of his thinking and his decisions. And even just before that, one of the things, he used to just shave, even in the land here, with a straight razor. And things happened in the first book where things changed and he got healed, but then he got the same sort of injury and he changed back. And so when he woke up in the real world, everything seemed so the same. And so he's determined, now that he figures he will eventually go back in this second book, he's determined that he will set the situation by not shaving. When he went back, basically the same moment that he went into the land. And so no time passed. And so he was clean shaven. He's not going to shave here in the land. And he's going to throw away his pocket knife or whatever. And so if he wakes up shaven, he'll know he was actually there. If he doesn't, he's just going to decide it wasn't real. And so it becomes important after he's had that sort of moment where Elena, he doesn't hate himself when he's looking at Elena from that moment on. And that's something. And she's such a reflection, I think, on Lena. Okay? Despite all these weird things that are happening, like, it's so weird because he's, when she's like, I'm willing, you can't ravage me when I'm like, it's really weird again, but he doesn't go through with it. I thought, are we having another moment like that where Thomas is going to do that again? I don't know how many times I can, but he doesn't. He doesn't do it. And so I'm still waiting for that moment where he meets up with Lena. Like, what is that going to be? And I'm still rooting for some kind of uh not perfect redemption for the guy or whatever, but you want him to change for the good with just like he can't change what he did. And so you still hope that he will make good with whatever situations come to him at some point and become a different person. That's what you hope for. But with Stephen Donaldson, like I still am gripped. I'm still am gripped, and I know that Thomas is still, our chosen hero by the end is usually here morally, and there's this moral core, and Thomas is maybe still here. But there is a deep moral core in this series that's at the center of everything, in this mercy and forgiveness. And as we see him walking around, like there's all these different feelings that people have for the guy once they get to really know him, and that clashes with their expectation, I think, of who should embody that sort of chosen hero seat or appointment or whatever, by whatever or whoever summoned him. And so it's complex. It's complex emotionally, and um, there's even this line that seems to represent the 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 feeling or the philosophy of the land, that not all crimes are committed by evil people. And so some people are willing, but that uh I can't remember exactly what that there was exactly a line of that, but not all crimes are committed by evil people, and some of those crimes are committed at the worst moments. It doesn't make it right, but they are more willing to, they want to rehab and make sure everyone's good, you know, over punishing, usually because they have this oath of peace. To punish and kill the guy would be it would be in their minds, uh you know uh whether or not he was the chosen one or not, it would be like breaking the oath of peace. And so as people are wanting to attack him, like Triok, Lena's the one who liked Lena so much, who still hates Thomas but wanted to defend her honor. Etiarn was the one that said, no, go back and don't break your oath of peace. And now Trell has a similar sort of experience in this book, and they also kind of talk him down there. And it's so amazing. I love all of those moments. Those are my favorite scenes, where people are reacting after, he even had those moments getting a staff, like in the first book, with these people, those the guys in the trees and foam follower, like um yeah, just very interesting. And so once, if the High Lord, I don't know if it's just a theory, but I couldn't help but think this. If the High Lord is some kind of representation of what Thomas needs in that moment to make some kind of breakthrough for himself, I don't know. Maybe the first book had some moment of doing something, and then the second one, with Elena as the High Lord, um, and once he starts to be given some kind of mercy by Elena, he's able to not hate himself when he's able to not hate himself through Elena, and that's something. That's something. And if that's all the breakthrough that Thomas can get up to this point in 2 books, not hate himself anymore, even if other people hate him, since this is Thomas's book, he's the main guy. If I would, I'll cheer for him. I'll cheer for him not hating himself through Elena. But I wonder what your thoughts are on this, because it's very complex, because it's hard to say, like, I'll cheer for him when he's done those things, right? But it seemed like a representation of, it's just very deep. It's very deep stuff. Very deep stuff. Or I'm just seeing things that shouldn't be there. But Stephen Donaldson has made something really, really fantastic here. So I don't want to keep going. I'm looking down. I didn't even realize that 45 minutes has gone by. But there's so much that this book is about. It's about belief and unbelief and responsibility over denial, internal truth and external action, maybe. Um, it's about mental wellness, and yeah, that I don't know what the philosophy would be of, what morally could you do if you thought a place didn't exist, and what would that say about your moral character, or whatever. I don't know. But he is now making connections in this land, and vocalizing that he's caring less and less about whether it's real, which is something that reflects more on Troy, where Troy also seemed to take kind of a step towards Covenant, actually. So it's crap, I forgot what I was just saying. But yeah, it seems like Covenant himself, more than anything else, we will know we will know the outcome of, or we'll know how things are going in the land a lot, I think, through, Thomas Covenant. And that's not just exclusive to this. Like, that's every hero. It kind of comes around in the end to being a heroic tale, even though it's through this character. But I think in a lot of ways it's more relatable, because I think, everyone has messed up with someone, not to that degree, um, but like they've messed up in wronging someone, and that comes to, not only does that person feel terrible, not like you, or whatever the case is, but you've fractured something. Lena and him were good for, sorta. Um, and then that happened, and it's like, holy crap. It felt in the early Lena stuff that it's like, hey, he's gonna find this awesome girl to, she's great. Um, Actually, no, like as a friend, or whatever, you know. Forgot about that. She was so young, just freaking weird. But like he could become friends in this whole land and things like that, but then he does something awful, and like we've all messed up a good thing, I think, and sometimes people that we've wronged are way cooler about it when you eventually talk about it, and want to apologize and things. But other people can be really still, like, how can you forgive that guy? And certainly a person who's done something wrong, it's relatable to not like yourself over it, and this was a big one. Um, this is a big one in this series. And so even though he's healed of the leprosy, now it's like a leprosy that in the land, his leprosy is it seems tied to what he did, and whether it seems impossible to heal relationships. Like now Atiaran might have died because of that, and so he has that on his conscience, and like he thinks, he still hasn't confronted Lena, and I'm just dying to know if that happens in the next book. Um, and not even confront. Like I want to know truly what that conversation will be. I assume that's in this last one. Yeah, the power that preserves. I just like, what the heck is this even a picture of? Because I want to know. But like, that's why this book, this trilogy is very deep. I find it very deep. Okay, and I've rambled enough. If you've come this far, thanks. This far in the video, thanks, because it was a lot of just thinking about things in retrospect now that I've finished it, and I only finished it about 20 minutes before turning on the camera. So I was thinking about it just for a little while. I think people should read this. I'm dying to do my Malazan reread and start that up again. I'm considering starting right at the first book and just going right through, but I wanted to get through the Illearth War first, and now I just have this one staring at me, while I also have this Star Wars channel thing going, and I really am excited about learning about a lot of that. So I'll have to balance this somehow, but really cool stuff. I think this is an A plus uh, saga so far. I loved the second book even more, even though I think the first half of the first book is just about as good as it gets. Um, it's great. It's great, great, great. And it makes you think. And it it could have had a number of different ways of doing the plot itself. And it would have worked because there's something at the core of what is being, talked about. This leper who is now not a leper in the land, but has a different form of thing that is like destructive. It's almost like he's a walking torch in the land, and it's just, even whether he's meaning to or not, it seems like it's just him being there is both the most important thing for the land at this point to overcome desolation, or its desolation. And very interesting how it's one or the other or both. And we still wonder, people think Lord Kevin, and I'm still talking, people think Lord Kevin was foolish for bringing that he got duped into bringing Lord Fowl in and desolation and stuff. And not some people question they still believe that he did the right thing, which also feels like, if that it feels like, to make like an Adam and Eve, it feels like that. Like, would Adam and Eve eating the fruit and bringing desolation to the earth or whatever, was that a wise thing? And it feels like it's, Kevin brought this. What an idiot. But maybe it was the right thing, because once you go through it, then the land's even better. Who knows? Who knows? Um, but it's so compelling, man. It's so compelling. And I'm glad that I really should finish this whole trilogy before going to the Malazan thing, because I gotta know. I gotta know. And I gotta know what's in the second saga, the second Chronicles. Um, like it has its hooks in me. So anyway, I will talk to you guys later. Thanks for coming along this long. Okay, bye bye.